It's an interesting day because Royce Ford has launched his candidature for the leadership of the PNC, but I'll get to that in a moment. Thank you for being here. Last week we had a bizarre situation here at the press conference. I saw the Kaichor News reporters, they exited, and then I asked where were they? And someone said they left. So I saw this news story from Kaichor News saying that the Kaichor News reporters were forced to walk out of Jagdeo's press conference after he allowed Guyanese critic to decide who asked questions. So this headline gives you an indication of the mental state of Glenn Lal. He's under siege, and in his madness, he conjures up enemies, and then he lives that out in his weird reality. Now, anyone who was here would know that several people asked questions. Critic asked his questions, then Kiana, the guy from Kimal, and several others. And I even asked for the reporters. But somehow I think they believe maybe they have a position of privilege here, that they get to ask the first questions and ask 30 questions, and then all of the other reporters must wait until they ask the nonsense that they get fed from Glenn Lal through these text messages. Now, that's not going to happen at my press conference. I'm in charge of the press conference here. So neither critic nor anyone else will allow that to happen. But Glenn Lal is in a mental state that is very troubling, worrisome. Not for us, for him personally. I sometimes watch, I can't bear to watch, but the little memes that people send to me. And he has overworked every topic on the oil and gas sector, and his views are getting more extreme, and they have no relevance. They have not even a single modicum of analysis, much less common sense. So this is false, but there are so many other things too. He claimed that my comment in his newspapers about what is taking place at the UN committee, the question asked about journalists, that it came from the oil and gas network, this group of people who came together recently to create an organization. If you look at who they are all the PPP haters gathered up together again. And so I pointed out much of their comments had nothing to do with the oil and gas sector. They submitted to the UN body where we were under review, a document talking about May Thomas and that some reporter was harassed by where the president was. All false. And I pointed out that the quality of journalism. So this is the incident I spoke of. And then I said that we should be happy in this country that we have a free media. Journalists are free to ask questions. They're not harassed. And that in some countries in the world, journalists are being killed now. They said that I threatened to kill journalists in the newspapers. They converted that again to it was a veiled threat to the journalists in Guyana that I'll kill them because Jagdeo is serious about the things he talks about. So the mere fact that he spoke about journalists being killed everywhere in the world means that he wants to kill journalists in Guyana. This is the madness that goes on in newspapers. And then the others will defend their right to say, this is journalism and this is a newspaper. This is not journalism. This is political posturing. And it all comes mainly from the opposition. So today I want to, I just had to say that because there's so many, you're going to see mounting evidence of what I'm speaking of, which is a lot of lies in the couture, fabrication. We saw it before, it happened in the past, in the pre-2015 era, and then they went silent almost in the entire APNU period on corruption and everything else, but all of the things that they were wrong on and they lied about, they until today have never had the decency to offer an apology. All the allegations of corruption that were investigated and no proof existed, they still persist with those, and now they've piled on new allegations. So you're going to see the Kaicho news get more and more extreme, and that's understandable given the political posturing of Glenn Lal and his mental state. The second thing I wanted to address today is the opposition press conference. So I think this entire press conference was dedicated to a couple of purposes. One is to say that we want to keep public servants poor. So the dissatisfaction, to generate dissatisfaction in the public service. Now, if you look at the track record of the People's Progressive Party in government, you would see that we took public servants who were pauperized under the PNC in the early period. I don't need to go back to history, but you can see the evolution of wages and salaries and conditions of service in the public sector made the greatest progress under the years when the PPP was in office. You get a lot of "we love you" statements and slogans from the PNC, but when you actually check the facts, you will see that the greatest progress has been made under the PPP. If you look at the labor laws of this country, the labor laws of this country evolved. All of the ILO conventions have been ratified by the PPP. We advanced legislation for protection of people, safety, etc. in workplaces. Wages and salaries in the real sense of the word has grown significantly over the period we're in office. And so today, it's a far cry from the early days when public servants left in droves, teachers left in droves to do trading. On the APNU, they used to be importing goods in little bags at the airport. You see them lined up at the airport. Public service wages for teachers and policemen and nurses were poverty wages. We were earning like $25 a month. And that was the average salary for workers in Guyana in the early 90s, $25 a month. That's like 5,000 Guyana dollars now for the whole month you're earning. And you can go back and check these facts. So APNU is really good at this, committing the bad acts, and then they label the other party, because in this country we don't do a lot of fact checking. So they do that often. And so today again we have seen let me pause to welcome my friends from the Kaicho News. Right. And Critic is now here to ask the questions for us. So this is what happened again today. Again, we want to keep public servants in poverty. The public sector was practically pauperized by APNU, not just public service. So Now Norton says, oh, the 1 month bonus that we took away from the the joint services, I'll return it. It's been returned already. And he wants to give other public servants the 1 month bonus. But they destroyed the bauxite industry. Let me tell you, people don't understand. And one would think that the bauxite industry is in APNU's base. When they signed the agreement with Minproc, when just before the PPP got into office, the agreement was to either restructure or close the bauxite operations in Linden. We decided not to do that, the PPP. Until today, bauxite is still functioning in Linden. When Lincoln Lewis and the others they were saying that the bauxite operations in the Berbice River were black gold and that making some exorbitant demands. When the bauxite companies, Alcoa and the others, walked away from Guyana, we were faced with a loss of thousands of jobs. And it was this government that took over the operations of the bauxite industry and ran it for several years. We ran the bauxite operations for several years because we did not want those workers to lose their jobs. We then got some new investors, Russell and the others, to take over. And then it was in 2015 that APNU got back, they got back into office, 2015 to the 2020 period. And because of their negligence, because of their complicity with Lincoln Lewis and the others, they led to the closure of the bauxite operations once again in the Berbice River. And now thousands of people have lost their jobs there again. So they shut down bauxite. They shut down their sugar. They were heading to shut down sugar totally, starting with the first 7,000 workers. The mining sector was reeling from the taxes that they put in place. So this fake love for public servants and for people in the public sector is just what I said. It's fake. It's crocodile tears, and APNU is really good at that. So not only are they trying to create dissatisfaction among public service workers, we've made it clear that the public sector will expand and grow. We're growing our budget for education. I pointed this out. It has grown in 3 years, 3.5 years, maybe 4 budgets we've had, by 162%. And in the health sector, by over 260%. Massive increases. That means a government that is committed to a better functioning public sector. A better functioning public sector. The army and the police have better conditions of service, more scholarships, you restore their bonus, etc. And this will grow in the public sector over time as we get more resources in the oil and gas sector. So we pointed this out. But what they're trying to do now is not just mislead public servants, but also they are trying to create a situation using a letter that was approved by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for people who want to recruit workers from abroad, specialized workers from abroad, to come in and work, not necessarily in government, but they wanted to avoid people being trafficked through Guyana. Under APNU, trafficking was a business, and that's established now. We submitted the details to the human rights body too, that the 40,000 Haitians who came to Guyana and disappeared from Guyana, they didn't come to live here. They were brought through Guyana, and they paid people in government for the privilege of passing through Guyana. And it was organized. It was organized trafficking, 40,000 of them. We wanted to avoid that, So the agencies legitimate agencies that want to do recruitment, they get a covering letter from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that they can recruit. And not just from Bangladesh, from anywhere where the skill type, where we have shortages in that skill type. Now we haven't made this being secretive about this. We've said over and over, and here at this press conference, I have repeated this, that in some areas we're allowing labor to come in to work. We pointed out that we're allowing the Chinese to bring in their labor for the bridge. And they said they were going to bring people from Bangladesh to work there because they work with them at building the stadium in Qatar for the World Cup, the same company that was working there. We allow others to bring in labor because we have a labor shortage in Region 4 particularly for some types of labor. And if we want these projects to be completed, the bridge, the highways, etc., we have to do that. We've said before that we're building 12 new hospitals. We are going to rehabilitate all the other hospitals. We need specialist doctors. We need more doctors. We need nurses. We already have a shortage of nurses. Our nurses are leaving to other countries. And they're getting a significantly higher rate, pay in some countries like the UK, etc., but they don't train. So we have to recruit people to come and work in these hospitals to make sure our people get the best quality care. We can't just build the hospitals and leave them there without staff. So we've been bringing in, the president has spoken with Cuba too. We've been bringing in many people from Cuba for the private sector, not we, but the private sector has been recruiting these people, and also from other countries. So the Bangladeshis are no different. If they come, they'll be recruited. But the thing is that they try to say that we're paying them more than what our own people will get, and that's patently false. It is false. It's fake again. It's conjecture by the opposition. They don't even know the contract. They only see the letter, but they already said the people will get more money. Well, I can say to you that any person who is recruited from abroad to work in the public sector, because a lot of these are not coming to work necessarily in the public sector, but if they come to work in the public sector, their conditions of service will be no better than what the Guyanese get. It would be comparable to what our people get for the particular skill. So if you have a registered nurse who is making X amount of money and including the other benefits, the Guyanese will have to get exactly that same amount, or maybe in some cases even higher. But they're not going to get less than anybody coming into this country to work in the public sector, where the comparable skill, our people have the comparable skill. That's clear. They are lying about this. This is what APNU does. Mahipal, you can't believe anything he says, and Norton. So today they went there to create this impression that we're going to bring in these foreigners, one, and treat them better than our own people. That's not true. And that somehow there is some sinister motive behind these people coming. So the next motive is we're bringing them to vote. So they admitted today at the press conference, after creating a whole campaign around the Venezuelans, that we are bringing back Venezuelans in large numbers to register to vote, and that they were being registered to vote by the PPP. Now they admitted that they haven't seen many Venezuelans registered. Even today's press conference, they had to admit that because they were asked about numbers of people. Or they shows the numbers, and they can't, so they had to admit that. So it's the same thing now. We're bringing Bangladeshis to vote for the PPP because we're worried about losing support. that they claim. They are the only party that's losing support in this country is APNU and AFC. They're losing support. And so this is another thing again. Oh, they're bringing these people to vote for them at election time. So it's excuse for elections that they know that they will lose. The next thing, so I said Roysdale Ford today, and I really should stay away from their internal politics, but sometimes it's so interesting for me that I can't resist the urge to comment on their internal politics. So whilst I'm at it, let me just share my views. So Roysdale Ford announced his leadership, his candidature. And then Norton had his say on this candidature. So whilst professing that it's a democratic party and everyone has the right to contest, etc., that's the standard kind of language that they use. But Norton has done two things at today's press conference. One, he said that Amnali is campaigning for Roysdale Ford, that Amnali said she prefers the PPP in office than APNU, and basically linking, and then they had some barbecue that they were raising funds, and then the people were told they were raising funds for Roysdale Ford. So by association, he is now saying the mole Roysdale Ford is a PPP mole. That's what he called them, moles. So he knows that's red meat to the rabid APNU base, because that's what is remaining with them. The rabid racists, the people who can't change from the past, they're bitter. Young people have left them in droves. If you go and see their protests and their activities, it's really a gathering of, I don't want to say older people, but that's the truth. And so the moment you say somebody is a PPP mole, then Roysdale Ford is seen in that light. And so I guess that would be a key element of his campaign. And then he said something. I think he implied Roysdale Ford is corrupt. So he said, our party is democratic and politically sensible. That's the big gaffe, right? The membership speak to me and they're looking for a number of things in a leader. One of them is that the PPP must have nothing on you so they can use it to their advantage. You must not be involved in any oil scam, or there is any document left in the government that, I don't know, but something he made a miss there about that they can sue to control you. So who is in their contestant, who is involved in an oil scam? It's Roysdale Ford, and his name has been mentioned publicly on a number of issues with importation of oil, etc. Norton has already fired the first shot here, implying that Roysdale Ford is corrupt. So this is clear about what's happening. So then Roysdale Ford launches his campaign, and when asked about the corruption, he said, in politics, people will make all sorts of allegations against you. So I look at this Obraj Narain is part of an organization created by Roysdale Ford, and guess who are the membership? Leon Saul, Lincoln Lewis is the chairman, and they wrote the police saying they must investigate me for allegations of corruption. Imagine Roysdale Ford organized. He just said today, in politics, people will make all sorts of allegations against you. And they now wrote the police saying the police must investigate allegations against me. And the chairman of the group is Lincoln Lewis. Now, if you put Lincoln Lewis in heaven, things will go missing. Things will go missing in heaven. With God being omnipresent and watching all the time, and even without the knowledge of God, things will go missing. And an Obraj, imagine this Obraj. You know how many allegations we have, and maybe even more factual things of things happening. But this is the duplicity of this. So Roysdale Ford, in defending himself against allegations of corruption made by Norton, is now saying in politics people say all sorts of things about you. But when they're prepared to make these allegations themselves about other people, but when it comes to back home, they get thin-skinned and complain about it and use it as defense. So for me, it's neither here nor there with Roysdale Ford or Norton. Now, Norton talks about that, about Roysdale Ford's allegation of being involved in oil scam, or implied that in his press conference today. Now, what about the 30 blank checks? I'm sure Roysdale Ford would have a lot to say about that. In fact, he said a lot. He and Paul, remember in the leak conversation with the treasurer, had a lot to say about these blank checks. So it's going to be a mud fest, and neither of them. It's a pity that this party that has such a long history, the PNC, would now have a competition for mediocre leader to lead that. Because I still believe the PNC could, have some redeeming factors. Now, maybe I should just move on from these people. Yeah. The next thing is, I saw an interview done on BBC, Hard Talk, and generally the tone of the interview was good. I think, as is known, this is a presenter who is known for his style. And he asked all the tough questions. And I think he asked them equally across the board to everyone that he met. There were tough questions, and they're often bandied about. And he gave, especially the president and others, a chance to respond to these questions. But there were lots of factual errors that were made. And so we don't want to get involved with all the details of it. But here are some of the factual things that he made a mistake on. So he said that internationally, many people believe that Guyana will move from a carbon sink to a carbon bomb. He said that we're going to be producing about $150 billion of revenue from the oil and gas sales in the next decade or so. And we will emit 2 billion tons of carbon. Now that figure is absolutely wrong. So we did a quick calculation, and if you look at the figure that was submitted in the environmental, when they sought an environmental permit for the licensing of the FPSOs. It was submitted that the maximum emission per FPSO would be 2 million tons of CO2 equivalent per annum. When we check now, the figures are running much lower than that. But even if we use those figures, 2 million per annum, and we have 6 FPSOs operating, which will give us between 1.2 to 1.5 million barrels per day. That's 12 million tons of CO2 emission per year. Now, every year, our forests sequester over 150 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. So if we're emitting 12 million tons per annum from 6 FPSOs, we don't have 6 operating as yet, but I'm talking about peak. That's only 7% of the carbon that our forests sequester from the atmosphere. So we cannot become a carbon bomb. We will remain a carbon sink even at maximum production of 1.5 million barrels per year. We'll remain a huge carbon sink globally. Now that's scope 1 emissions. So scope 1 and 2. So scope 3 emissions is when you burn the fossil fuel. So how do we calculate this? So they look at 1.5 million barrels per day over 365 days, and then multiply it by 10 years, or let me go the annual figure. So 1.5 million barrels by 365, and then multiply by the carbon content, which is 40 kg of CO2 equivalent per barrel. And that gives you about 27.4 million barrels per day, tons per year. 24.4 million tons per year. So if you add that, now let me say that is when it's scope 3. So that is when the oil goes to another country, is refined and used. We, under the United Nations, the International Convention, only when oil comes on shore do we have to account for these emissions. So the oil don't come on shore here, so we only have to account for the 12 million tons that the operations, or scope 1, we emit every year. The rest of the oil goes to another country and it's burnt there. But even if we utilize that, combine that's 30 something, nearly about 40 million tons a year, which is still only 25% of our sequestration from annual sequestration by our forests. So even if we account for all, even the end use of the carbon, we still remain a huge carbon sink. We will never be a carbon bomb. And so his figures were wrong, because it's not $150 billion. It's $410 billion if you calculate using the same period. And the emission level is about maybe 20% of what he said in the interview. 20%. And that is Scope 3 emission. So it's all fake. And I would urge him to relook at his numbers, or the experts who sent him these numbers. I think he mistook the billion tons with billion barrels. So I think he divided 150 billion by $75 and got 2 billion barrels. But he said it's 2 billion tons, which is a different issue. So factually, it was wrong. The next factual error that he made was he said that gold mining has been driving deforestation. And he said a legacy of deforestation. We have the lowest deforestation rate in the world. And after over 100 years of producing gold and cutting the trees, we still have 86% of our forests in our country covered with forests. After over 100 years of producing gold and cutting trees, because we have one of the lowest deforestation rates in the world, if maybe the lowest now, and the second highest forest cover in relation to the country in the world. So this is not factually accurate again. You'll notice that almost everybody who spoke with him spoke about the industry. They expressed concern, but they also said that we need to have this industry move forward. Except Vanda Radzik, that she started off by this extreme position, and then when asked, what do you suggest? She wanders off from the vulnerability of Guyana. And because we recognize that vulnerability, we will be spending $122 million of the $150 we earn from the sale of forest carbon, and over time, maybe over $2 billion from the sale of forest carbon to climate-proof ourselves because of that vulnerability. But the vulnerability exists whether we produce oil or not, because this vulnerability is driven not because of our own action, but because of what is happening globally, global warming, to which we are a minuscule contributor. A minuscule contributor. So when asked about that, until now she didn't give a decent answer. She wandered off into some fancy, oh, we got to renegotiate the contract now. Guys, and at the other end of the spectrum, people say, leave everything in the ground. What is she saying? Should we leave everything in the ground? Because this is what you get, this wishy-washy position. They can't take a strong position. We have taken a strong position, and the interview expressed that. He said that this government has said that it wants to get as much oil out of the ground as quickly as possible in the context of net zero. And is this not contradictory? And the answer is no. Because when the justice argument comes in place, that the other countries are expanding their fossil fuel production, including the United Kingdom, including the United States of America, then why should we, and I think most people being interviewed are saying, why should we forego our development opportunities to save the world when our emission would be a tiny part of global emission, And in the countries, the developed countries in the world that already have a high level of economic development and social development, they're expanding fossil fuel production. It's nonsensical. So they speak about inequality and if oil and gas has changed your life. And every interviewer does this, not just this one. Every interview does this. Has oil and gas changed your life? And what are the facts here? The facts are that only 2 years we've utilized oil and gas money. These countries took 60, 70 years to get to where they are today of development. Many of them polluting the world, many of them with child labor, like in the UK, with all sorts of things, slavery. They took hundreds of years to get to their position. We have utilized oil and gas money only 2 years, and not large sums of money. The first year was $600 million or so, just over 600, and the second year was just over $1 billion. And this year we've programmed money for 2024. But it was 2022 and 2023. 2 years, but they expect already all of our people to be rich. Are you, the oil and gas has changed your lives? Are you rich now, etc.? 2 years of utilization. But look at this country and the changes that have taken place in 2 years. The last 2 years, in fact, the last few years. More of our people are employed now. We went from massive unemployment under APNU now to labor shortages. We're now expanding healthcare. We're expanding education. We're expanding infrastructure. We have more people being trained, more on scholarship. We're moving to free education. But they expect us to get wealthy in 2 years of using oil and gas money. And the money now in this year, which is the highest sum that we're using for 2024 now, we haven't utilized it as yet. It's less than 30% of the budget. It's less than 30% of the budget. But has oil and gas changed your lives? So Norton took them to the gentleman to Sophia. You notice he didn't go to Eccles or Diamond or Fowles or Amelia's Ward, all these built-up schemes, or Tushin, etc. Now, Sophia, we are proud of that. Under APNU, it was a squatting area in the early period. I don't remember when Chedi Jagan came into office, that's when the development of Sophia started, and road network, lights, potable water, all of those things were absent. And now we're doing the road network, and people have jobs there too. So under APNU, Norton's plan is people wouldn't be owning any house there, they'd be renting. Look at what. So in Linden, they did nothing in Linden for the housing, except for themselves. We are developing 400 house lots in Amelia's Ward. 160-something people went there now who are squatting all the time under APNU, got their lots now. And he complains about, the road stopped somewhere here, and we're discriminating against the people because they're APNU people. I thought the whole of Linden at one time was APNU. So this is what you get from them. They don't focus anything. The people wouldn't get any house lot, but we stopped the road at a certain point. The infrastructure for the whole area will be done. The whole area, like we said in Georgetown, and you see it happening and everywhere in the country. The road network is improving, and it will improve everywhere. But so he goes there to talk about cost of living, and to tell a man coming from the UK about cost of living. You try living in the UK. Now you don't have to get visa. Even Critic went here. And you don't have to get visa to go to the UK. You go and see what the cost of living is in the UK. And the trouble that the governments there have because of cost of living increases. Find out about their energy charges, how it skyrocketed. It tripled the heating charges and electricity bill just a couple of years ago, triple. Here in Guyana, we've kept it constant because we are subsidizing. The rate was 22 cents per kilowatt hour when the oil prices GPL was paying $75 per barrel. Now they're paying $104 per barrel, and the rate is 22 cents per kilowatt hour. Because this government has kept it subsidized so that not a single home has a higher electricity bill or businesses. That's a massive, massive subsidy. I've spoken about us removing the 50% excise tax on about $800 million US dollars worth of imports of gasoline and diesel. You calculate what that would be. That's about $75 billion per annum of subsidies. Because you talk about cost of living. So globally, this is a phenomenon, and worse, and he complains to the man from the BBC, who probably, if he goes to a supermarket in the UK, Norton would get a heart attack if he goes into a supermarket there when he looks at the real cost of living and compare it with the wages too. That is why, although our purchasing, the man mentioned $60,000 per capita GDP, but it's not $60,000 in nominal terms. It is half of that, but because our purchasing power parity is stronger, it's half of that of the United States of America. Well, twice as that of the United States of America. So a dollar can get you twice as much goods as in those countries. That is why they're saying 60,000 US dollars. And so we're very happy. The guy repeated a lot of the things that he was told by these NGOs. And the president gave great answers to all the questions that were there. We pointed out on the insurance, they talk about oil spill. If you look at what we have done with environmental permits, if this gentleman only had a chance to review the environmental permit that was issued in the tenure of, what's his name, the one Adams, versus an environmental permit today, he would just recognize the magnitude of the change. We're one of the first we have a zero flaring policy, but we always had a zero flaring policy, but we put in place a carbon tax to support that. Cradle to grave management of waste, treating of wastewater, a whole range of other things. The cap and stock to make sure that it's resident in the country to address oil spills, etc. We're passing new legislation now to ensure that happens. So almost everything he raised, we can give credible answers. So people should read or watch the interview in the sense that a lot of the stereotypes that exist in other parts of the world. So somewhere in the northern NGOs and then the Van der Radzigs and the others, they slavishly repeat everything. Oh, stop the oil production, keep it in the ground. Too much emissions will come, but they don't tell the developed world to do that because they're expanding. But stop it in this developed country because you're creating a carbon bomb. It's not so. It's done responsibly. Secondly, you have a moral obligation to do this because the world, you would have sea level rises and it will affect your country. What about the moral obligation of the developed world that has the current concentration of greenhouse gases that already driving climate change was almost put there entirely by the developed world. But they want us to be responsible now. We must forego development opportunities because we have although we have poor people, but they must continue to have 3-4 cars and drive them and their SUVs, etc., and raise their emission levels. And then the same people would say, come and tell you, what are you doing to get your people out of poverty? What are you doing to get your people out of poverty? So this is the condescension. Oh, can you manage these resources well? Can you manage these resources well? Well, we're managing them even better than most of these developed world because because we have total transparency in the use of the resources. Every cent has to be appropriated by the parliament before it's spent. We have provisions that demand that in fact not demand, they mandate that the Minister of Finance has to inform the public. You look in the other countries that are producing oil and gas for decades and centuries, whether they are obligated by law to publish receipts. It's not so. So we are very pleased with our stewardship and the strong measures that we have put in place to monitor this sector, unlike many of those countries. But we are not going to forego our opportunities. And I'm so proud of the Guyanese, most of them, except in this Van der Radzig. I'm proud of the Guyanese who were interviewed because they all made that point. You just look at them. They said, it's our turn now. We need to develop. Let the developed world make adjustments. In fact, they have a more polluting form of fuel than ours. What about their responsibility? Why do we lecture these countries all the time? Would you have gone, imagine a country, a reporter from Guyana or a specialist from Guyana going to any part in the US where you have like massive poverty. If you look at parts of the US, massive poverty. Don't see it. The United States has maybe 30 million people who are illiterate. Illiterate. That's 30 times our population. 30 times, even more, who are illiterate. If you look at their poverty profile, you don't get those questions. And they don't get those questions because it gets masked there. If you look at our attempt to address poverty, it's everywhere. In the indigenous communities, you see big attempt to tackle the issues of access to basic needs and employment and right across the country in a more organized way and in a fairer way than many of those countries. So when you worry about inequality, etc., you should apply it there. But just imagine 2 years after the president mentioned the Industrial Revolution in the UK. In the Industrial Revolution, this is after slavery. Children used to work 18 hours a day. And when I say children, like babies, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, sometimes 15 to 18 hours a day in the factories in those countries. Just imagine that happening today. And just 2 years after the Industrial Revolution, where a Kaichor News reporter had gone there and said, do you feel that you're benefiting from this Industrial Revolution 2 years after it started? In our case, we can point to things that people are benefiting from. Not necessarily a major shift, but they're getting more jobs now, higher income in some cases, more opportunities, better education, access to education, better infrastructure. We can start pointing this out. They wouldn't have been able to point out anything of that sort. And so that is why we don't take to the lectures kindly, because we're confident that these resources belong to our people, and we have to, first of all, we're elected to work for our people, but we are also mindful of our international obligations. And you have a group of people here in this country who are hell-bent on pulling down everything. Some of it is because of jealousy, like some of it is because they seek relevance, like some of these NGOs, some because of the politics, they're political NGO, and some because of plain stupidity, like Glenn Lal. So this is what happens, and you have to fight against it all the time. I spoke on the UN Human Rights Committee. So we told you that after the initial questions came from some members of the committee that we found were not part of the submission. So people are invited to make submissions, NGOs. You had a few of these local ones made their submissions. Now that the submissions are revealed, you would see how political they were. But a lot of the questions raised did not come from the submissions. So we then wondered where they came from, and we believe they were sent by APNU and the others, and they met with, like in New York and other places, planted questions. But notwithstanding, we can answer those. These are questions that came. We noticed that they removed the Rickford Burke, and the final report, the Rickford Burke matter, disappeared because we pointed out that he's wanted for extortion. They were trying to make it look like because he's a critical of the government, we are persecuting him. But now I think the system has on record his criminal conduct and the charges that were laid against him. And then even the allegations made against me, we had a response to that. I noticed in the final report that those were removed, names were removed. But notwithstanding that, the report raises a lot of issues for those of you who are familiar with Guyana on the Amerindian Act, on a whole range of issues that we've given full explanations on. And Gail Teixeira several times complained that she had 140 questions or so to answer in a 40 minutes period. Then we were given 1 day to respond to that. After the questions came, we got the response in. Then when this draft came out, we were given 24 hours to respond again. And we have, so you're going to see our response to the report that's posted. It's a lengthy response. In 24 hours, we put in the response to say that the final report did not take into consideration a lot of the information that we supplied. So because we have a good track record on human rights issues and all of these matters, we can rebut these allegations. I fear that some countries may not be able to do this, but we can do that. But if they don't get in the final report, but they will definitely be published too, so people can see the response, and we'll continue publicizing this. We don't control this as an independent committee. I know the next review will be, I think, 2032 for Guyana. So this is, we've had to answer for a long period coming forward, including the whole APNU period. We have had to answer for those two, and corruption in that period. People don't even see that in the original submission. You notice our original submission has not gotten any publicity because the original submission pointed out several things. that took place in that period, the 5 years period, that were anti-democratic and that served to undermine human rights. Granger and his cabal, they violated the Constitution maybe about 30 times in that period, in the 5 years. No less than 30 times. And I mean egregious violation, not just like, run-of-the-mill kind of, well, there's no run-of-the-mill violation of the Constitution, but I mean things that have less import to the well-being of the people. I don't mean that. I mean really, really try to undermine critical institutions that are the foundation of human rights and democratic order, like GCOM and free and fair elections and all of these things. So I would urge the reporters, but they're very selective again. They handpick a couple of things. They would never look at the original submission, then look at our responses. You're going to get the responses now. So I hope that they can give them full publicity the same way that we have had. So this is the same kind of thing. Wealth derived from oil, gold only benefits the richest in society, who remains in extreme poverty. This is the kind of suggestion we get from it. And in Kaichor News, it must be. So this again, after 2 years, they want us to become wealthy in this country. Wealthy in the country. So this is because they're fed this nonsense from Norton. Oh, I saw he said the usual cronies, families, and friends. He even said it on the interview. Maybe I should end here. Right. Thank you.
Dr. Jagdeo, the critic for Daybreak News.
You should give the other people a chance first. Anyhow, I sure believe that perfectly. Okay, all right, okay. Go ahead, I was just joking. You go with your thing. He's not controlling, I'm controlling the press conference. So don't get up and leave again. Glenn Lal, if he asks a tough question, Glenn Lal might tell you all to go. Don't leave.
Nothing will be lost if the Patriot report is left out.
All right, please.
For the second Congress of the People's Progressive Party,
sure.
Can we get an update on that?
Yeah, well, the update is we're getting ready for the Congress and everything is running smoothly. Is there anything specific that you would like to ask me, though? Because, I pointed out that there are several committees working. So we have a committee that is made up of several members and a member of the Central Committee who is looking like the Credentials Committee. So they're looking at people, the groups, the financial members, the submission of the delegates, whether the delegates are eligible for contests, because they have to have a time period and be financially eligible. All of those things. Have a credential committee, organizing committee that deals with logistics. So there's several committees that are functioning at the same time. The East Coast, there's a special committee on the East Coast because, in Region 4, because we're holding the Congress in Region 4. This is Region's 4 turn this year.
As General Secretary, are you satisfied with how the process is done?
Yes, I'm pleased. So almost everyone is involved. We have maybe from the Central Committee, from maybe about 17 or maybe over 20 members who are part of one committee or another. More than half of the Central Committee are in different committees planning.
Jagdeo, from last evening to today, there have been what I can only suggest, although it's in the media, certain sections of the media, because of the sections of the media that said it could be considered to be rumors. But is government aware of one of the senior police ranks on his way back from training in India being pulled in by the FBI in the United States of America?
Yes, we saw that in the media. It came out in the media. The report, from what we gather, from what I gather, a report was made to the superior officer or the senior officer of that policeman. So that will engage the leadership of the police force, and that's where the matter will be dealt with.
Does the government have any worries what it relates to the line of questioning?
No, I personally, I did not seek to find out what it related to, because that should be dealt with by the police force. The United States of America will not tell us what their questions are, why they question people, because that's immigration matter. They don't, as a matter of policy, they don't release why visas are withdrawn or denied. So a lot of people have had visas withdrawn or denied, but they will not share that information that is they keep that information to themselves. If there is any criminality on the part of anyone in government, then once the information is shared with us formally by the US government, there'll be action taken against people. But we can't go on the basis of allegations and all of that. And, you know, like Rick Ford Burke and his boy, I was going to say how he gets this information, but he, his contacts saying that they want to investigate certain officials of the government of Ghana. We can't run around based on conjectures and rumors. So, but let me assure you that if there is any information that's shared about criminality on the part of anyone, including police officers, that they will face the full consequences of the law. We made it clear. Anyone that this party, because at one stage people were claiming that they were beholden, that the party is beholden to certain individuals in this country, and therefore will defend them at any cost, even if they commit illegality. And I've made that clear, that the party is bigger than any individual, and that nobody should harbor a modicum of doubt as to how we will act in case that there are verified cases of illegality, that we will act in a manner consistent with the law. So let me disabuse. That's all I can say. I don't like getting into hearsay. This person says that, and Rick Ford Burke with his shrill kind of nonsense running around every day with his tight pants gang over there, dealing with getting information from that gang and posting it all the time. I don't deal with that. We have serious business. So I don't want to get sucked into that, the grind associated with Rick Ford Burke and the others. So that is where it often leads us. But we have one position. Our position, you commit illegality and it's pointed out to us, and it's verified. And if there's official report of that from the US government, we'd be happy to investigate it fully.
Some years ago, Dr. Jagdeo, Venezuela recently passed a law to incorporate Espejo, which is a violation of the BHARRAT agreement. Many others say this doesn't apply any person who is just a distraction in case of election. Do you agree with this?
We are taking it seriously. And so that is why the Foreign Ministry put out a statement. And you would see from the statement that the government of Ghana is treating this as a serious matter. So it could be a distraction from its domestic issues, but we are treating it, any threat to our sovereignty is taken seriously by the government of Ghana. And as we pointed out in that press statement, it flies, their actions fly in the face of the Argyle Agreement, the promises that were made here to try to keep this region as a zone of peace, and it is contrary to the provisional measures that the ICJ declared.
Secondly, on Rickford Burke, he was asked the High Court to question some defamation charges against him. He says the charges are politically motivated, fabricated, and unconstitutional. Your thoughts on this action?
So we told Rickford Burke to try to steal money, extort money from the businessman. That's politically motivated. But that's the refuge of scoundrels. You know, they always go, oh, it's politically motivated. So they justify their illegality by claiming it's politically motivated. Now, anyone knows that who's examined his posts would know that this is a conman. He has a one-person organization. He extorts people overseas, collects money. He lives off of this. The only reason he is not in jail or can't be sued is because he's hiding out in the United States of America. And that he has been and is a criminal, because it's clear the businessman has him on tape that he was trying to extort money from that person. And we know the mechanism through which they have done this, because he does this frequently. In this case, he got caught, he's charged, so he is trying to fight one thing now. That is why I thought he doesn't believe in our courts, he doesn't believe in anything, he will just ignore it all, because forget this illegal government, forget the court. Now he's gone to the High Court to seek justice. And the justice is to try to prevent the trial from going forward. So he's hoping for delay now, because if the trial moves forward, if he doesn't show up on the appointed date, then there could be a warrant issued for him. And so he is trying to stay the proceedings in the magistrate's court by going to the High Court. It's a legal maneuver, but it doesn't change the nature that this is a criminal who has done a con job in the US, including on very influential people. And the more that they find out about him, they'll find out he's toxic to their own careers. Because now in the entire UN review panel, they've seen who Rickford Burke is. He's a petty criminal. Well, not petty. He's a big criminal, but petty-minded criminal. I must say petty-minded, but a huge criminal. So he's going to be jumping around, and his organization, the one-man organization, will issue 4 more statements before the day is done, and he'll go on a live on Bench Cop and get all frantic and worked up, but that doesn't change the nature. This is a first-class con man who is wanted in Guyana for criminal acts, especially for extortion. Forget the charges where he's been pushing racism and all of that stuff. So the UN committee said we should strengthen the laws against racism, racial hostility, etc. The Racial Hostility Act is clear. He would go to jail under that act, but they said strengthen it. But when you strengthen, even if we were to strengthen it, you have a man who every day promotes racism, who hasn't come here, I saw in the newspaper, for 20-something years. 20-something years, but he pushes racism here, trying to divide our people at home. And he's only evading that by being abroad and technicalities. If he were in Guyana, he'd probably be in jail already because of his criminal acts.
And you
Yes.
from the Chronicle, turning your attention back to the Human Rights Commission, they would have recommended that a COI be held into the 2002 and 2003 crime reviews. What are your thoughts on this? And is this something the government is ready to pursue?
So first of all, this matter was debated over the years. So my position in the public domain is well known, that any such COI is to establish what's already known in the police records, that APNU was complicit. First of all, the lies that they told about 1,400 people killed, 1,400, then they got it reduced to 400. Now sometimes it goes up to 400,000, Valder Lawrence said. You can't settle on a number. But even if it's 400, they used to say 400 young black men killed by the PPP. That's not true if you look at what happened in that period. Secondly, we know of leaders from the PNC who were supplying them with material and who were who used to visit the gangs. But a lot of people from the village itself, because they took over that village, as I pointed out, a lot of people in Buxton had to leave the village, people with young kids, especially young girls, because many were molested by the criminals. They left the business community, and APNU did that. APNU provided a cover for the criminals to do that, harass the people in that village. So, and then we know about who was defending all of these criminals. At one stage, they got some of the psychopaths who killed babies, etc. They appeared on television. You remember on Channel 28 at that time and some other channel, I think maybe Channel 9, with camouflage uniform saying they were fighting for freedom. So it was insurgency. You're not fighting for freedom. These are hardcore criminals. Then they got into issues with the drug operation, the drug dealers. They got a fight among themselves. Not because they were defending the government, but because they were stepping on each other's turf. So we know what took place. So even Sashaw murder, the file was prepared, and in the file, we knew who the killers were. And so we said it will just confirm that. Granger, who wanted this same propaganda, was feeding into the propaganda, oh, we killed 400 young Afro-Guyanese, announced a commission of inquiry. He said, I'll have a commission of inquiry. And then I think he was dissuaded by the leadership of the PNC in not doing it, because they knew, one, it would show that no 400 young black kids were killed, and two, that they were complicit. So he did not do that. Now, that promise was made in one of their submissions to the UN in 2018. So we are now asked, where is this inquiry? But they don't differentiate, because even if the corrupt government in APNU did something, we got to answer for it now, because we're government now. So we got to defend a lot of these things now. So we were asked, we said, where is this inquiry? And it should go ahead. So the government will be going ahead with the COI, because the UN wants it, Granger wanted it, and I hope that there will be no prevarication anymore. There shall be a COI into what took place in this period.
My final question. Earlier you mentioned the opposition leader's appearance
Yeah. I resent about he saying that there's squatting area. Sophia is part of the city. We're working to integrate Sophia in the city. Right now we're doing several grounds in Sophia. We're building out a road network in almost all the fields and all the roads in Sophia are going to be done as we're doing everywhere else. Sophia never had potable water. Potable water is there, electricity. Nicer houses are being built in Sophia. More people are working there. So this was an area that started off as a squatting area, but people are living there now and they're part of our country, etc. But Norton took the gentleman there because he wanted to make a point. But there's several housing schemes that we develop in this country. Why didn't he take them to another one? But he is the leader of the opposition. So that's the standard thing. When you're in opposition, and particularly when you don't have any plans, or you're very vague on policies, you go back to the gut instinct. And so that's what he is familiar with. Oh, shout that the PPP wants, gives everything to friends, family, and cronies, ignoring your own history, and oh, people are poor and the cost of living is high. That's all he does. Now, you know, I saw a strange thing, that he now has all the information. Kaichor News again. He now has all the information to decide on ring fencing. He now has all the information. So I hope he makes a decision on ring fencing. It's just every week it's a shame that we have such I can't find better word. I'm kind of wishy-washy. I think wishy-washy is like it shows drift and come back and drift everywhere. Wishy-washy is the best word I can come up with. It describes his actions, what he says. It's just like devoid of any content. It's just like ebbs and flows all the time. Wishy-washy is the right word.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's probably my question. I hope when I start really critic for this mic, I'll be safe for the church.
Bully critic for the mic?
For the mic, yeah.
Oh, you bullied him for the mic? I gave an explanation. Last week did somebody chase you all from here? How come the newspaper has that you were prevented from asking questions? Did I prevent you last week from asking any question? No. But did I prevent any reporter from Kaichor News last week to ask any question? No. Right, no, but we need to clarify this. After critic asked his questions, Kiana asked questions, several questions. Now, then Kemal asked questions. Then several other people. Where was this critic taking over my press conference? But I think that the question that Granada was opposed to is when I was asked by critic whether he should be investigated for murder. And I said the BHARRAT should write the police about that. I think that offended him because he probably is listening there to what we're saying. And he told you all to exit the place. But nobody prevented you from asking questions. So let's move on now. Let's establish that his paper was lying on that. Yeah.
You mentioned, by the way, I wrote the story.
Oh, you wrote the story?
By the way.
Well, then
you mentioned.
I was hoping that you were not as irredeemable as he is. Anyhow, please, yes, go on with the question.
Yes, you mentioned that developed countries took 60, some 70 years to get where they are. We were speaking about it. Some of them had better deals than that. The guy asked him to see about the standard trends. We're going to be able to clearly worse deal than that, be able to develop in less time than them, or will they be able to bridge that quality in less time than that, or will it take longer?
So the duplicity runs across the board. So the same people who say we must save the money now, not utilize it, and we must utilize save the resources like Norway did, using their model, sovereign wealth fund model, etc. Including some of your contributors. They use the Norwegian model as the gold standard. They would not say that Norway, for the first 19 years of production of oil, did not have a sovereign wealth fund. From the first year of production, we had one, and we started depositing money for the future. Norway did not establish a fund for the first 19 years. It took them another 6 years after the establishment of the fund to start saving. So 25 years after Norway started producing oil and gas, it started saving for the future. It meant that it spent back every cent that it got immediately on the economy, back in the economy. The same people want us to come and lecture. Your guy Sanzillo said, old people don't need roads, you gotta save the money. Save the money for the future. Duplicity, nonsense they promote. It's almost a professional, they lack professional ethics. Or maybe simply they don't know. Sanzillo doesn't know this, but he recommends a model because I don't put great store on their capability to manage anything. They run some obscure self-appointed institute or something, self-created institute, and never one day manage a country. But they have all these papers that are written, but to have very little practical application. That's the first thing. Secondly, I pointed out that Norway lost $164 billion in 1 year from the investment in the sovereign wealth fund. You know, in the 10 years that the Sakur pointed out, he said in a decade we would produce $150 billion. In the whole decade we could lose, based on his number, as much as what Norway lost in a single year. That wouldn't, but the Norwegian model is still a great model because of the principles. But I'm just pointing out, nobody says this. You don't get this when it happens in a developed country. Oh, that the model is bad, look at the government, how terrible it is, etc. Have you ever seen an article written? It's a Reuters story and it's the end of it. Just a Reuters story, 164 billion loss, US dollars I'm talking about. And it's gone. They don't have a Kaichor news there and stuff like that. Are gone. So that's on one side. Here it is about how long does it take to change standards of education, healthcare, infrastructure, access to jobs, etc. It takes a while. You have to build, first of all, look at our hospitals. Now the APNU criticizes for building all these new hospitals. But if we don't build the modern hospitals with the best theaters in the world, how could we offer a world-class health care? But you're not going to build a big hospital like we're building at New Amsterdam or at Ogle here, one for children and women. In a year, it takes you 5 years to do that, and then maybe another year or two to really get the level of healthcare up to European standard. But they would go now and say, oh, have you seen the benefit already? But you have to start working on it, making the investment now. That nuance you don't get anywhere. I can give 100 examples of this. So I'm not saying it will take us 60 years. I'm saying that already we can see the investment in a short period, in 3 years, that will put us to world-class education, world-class healthcare, modern infrastructure, reliable, cheap power, world-class facilities like playgrounds and all of that, stadia, etc., recreational facilities, great digitization of the economy, which is running in a parallel track apace, ensuring that all of these things happen faster. So I'm not looking for a 60-year time frame or 100 years. But you can't come in 2 years and go to Sophia and ask, oh, look at the drain now. The drain is not clean here. And the guy said they don't have potable water, which is not true. Oh, that's it. You can't say that. Because I could go to a slum in the UK where I could go there as a reporter, and if I go to all the slums in the United Kingdom, you will leave there thinking that it's a country of slums or high unemployment, because they have massive unemployment there in that country, massive unemployment. Or I could go into their supermarkets and check all the prices, and you'll be shocked to see what price for a kilogram of rice is in that country. You can always pick and choose, like how Kaichor News pick and choose. They don't tell the whole story. I just came out with, I told you that the whole story is about all the bits together. And we can tell a consistent story, how we fought to keep our country safe in the COVID period and still fight cost of living and still try to kickstart the economy, which was dead in the apnea period even before COVID struck. It has been a big challenge how we put together all these plans for roads and stuff. If you have a chance to, any Guyanese, just drive down the road, the Heroes Highway, and then drive out back to Diamond, the road that goes east to west. And you will see what I'm talking about. 3 years ago, that was not there. And look at what is happening down there. Just take that drive there, and then you will get a sense of what's happening around the country. And this is happening in multiple communities. Communities that didn't have roads are now getting roads and stuff. So it's not going to be a cash handout to everybody. But I would say that we have a better stewardship of our resources than many of these countries that send in people to lecture us. But any reporter can come from abroad, and often when they come, they don't go and say, look at this great thing that's happening here, this country is transforming. They hook up with these NGOs, or Norton takes you to Sophia.
Secondly, many commended the President for his response to the reporter, which was a very good response when he told the reporter, he came come to lecture us on climate change, and we have a forest that you don't pay us for. But at the same time, many have criticized that he does not come up with the same aggression to holding the companies accountable for many things. For example, their discrepancies that were found in the audits and so forth. The government did not take measures to prevent such recurrence in other projects. And so how do you respond to this?
No, but you're conflating several things. You're conflating a condescending kind of lecture where this is a smart guy who did the interview. He knows that saying that Guyana is a carbon bomb, moving from, where we are today to a carbon bomb, is patently false. But he would ask the question, so the president had to point out about these lectures that we get from the developed world. Imagine a country like the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has cut down all of its primary forests, practically all of its primary forests. There are very little original forests anymore. You remember Robin Hood, who used to live in this forest there. It was a real forest there too. They've gone with that too. Or old forests. They cut down all their trees. Their per capita emission is higher than ours. They've just opened some coal plants, the coal mines, when they were leading the charge in 2021, I think at the Glasgow COP, to ban coal production. They've given permits for over 100 oil operations. They've withdrawn from several of their international obligations. And they're coming to talk about our forests, which and Guyana becoming a carbon bomb. And a lot of the things too. This guy, he shouldn't have even asked the question about Exxon and all this production. If you're worried about scope 3, it's not where the oil is produced, it's where it's consumed. So 99% of our oil production will be consumed in the developed world. Why don't you stop consuming it? If you're so concerned about climate change, why don't you stop? Or why don't you put on a carbon tax, as we've been promoting, to pay for the externalities? So we're just producing it. But if the developed world and the other countries stop consuming it, then you'll move faster to decarbonize the world. But they consume it in large quantities and then go to the developing countries that are producing it and saying, oh, you're creating the problem. It is the consumption. They don't want to manage consumption, and the bulk of the consumption takes place on a per capita level in these countries. So it is those lectures. When you talk about audits and stuff like that, that's a regular thing. The president doesn't have to deal. You have technical agencies. Every day we have dedicated ministry and GRA to deal with our audits, because we believe that the politicians must not get involved in those issues routinely. They get advice, because those are checking accounts, going through bills, sorting out things, understanding conventions. Like Golsorana has never done a cost recovery audit, but suddenly he's a specialist on it. He is a specialist. So we don't believe that the president must be dealing with that. But when you have an external group that repeats some of the stereotypes, oh, Greenpeace, leave all the gas, oil and gas in the ground. So if we leave all of it and don't develop anymore, but the oil still needs oil and gas for the next 50 years, guess who's going to get wealthy? Norway, the United States, Saudi Arabia, all the existing producers. So, and that's considered fair, and it gets repeated here, and Van der Radzik says it. Oh, leave it all there. We shouldn't touch it. But we have a ton of poor people there. That's what she couldn't respond to. Should we leave it all there when the interviewer asked her? Should we leave it all there? Forget the people of this country. Forget the 6,000 jobs that we have, or the 1,500 Guyanese companies that are getting $700 million of business from the sector. Forget the revenue for the time being. We must forget all of that, because Van der Radzik wants us to go with Greenpeace suggestion. That is, and you think we get angry? It's not anger, it's disgust that I expressed often at these press conferences. They think it's anger, it's disgust, because these people have no integrity. They don't have any coherent train of thought, because they've never run anything. Their bread is well buttered. They live cushy lives, and they don't care whether the man in Blackbush Polder, he gets water for his farm, or the people living in Sophia get a road to drive on or a playground for the kids. They don't care about that, or the sugar workers have a job. All they're concerned with is getting their faces in the newspapers, and also going to some conference, thinking that they're relevant. And they're the conscience of the society. They're not they're conscience. They're parasite. For a long time they've been parasitic. And that's why I call them names. Not because I hate them personally. So you can go off. I see Kaichor News had an editorial on my press conferences, abuser in chief, and all of that. Well, forget that. Yes, I will continue doing that, because they want to take away our future. We're not going to allow that. The PPP is now a wishy-washy party, you know. They like the PNC. So when Kaichor News puts out something and 3 weeks they put it out and force Norton, suddenly you see Norton repeating the position because he has no position. We have positions. We're going to push back if it's bad for the country, bad for our people, and all of our people I'm talking about. We push back because we have a view and so how to change people's lives. He doesn't, but so every week it's like he's led by the nose. The newspapers lead them by the nose. The reporters lead these guys by the nose. Oh, what about ring fencing this week? So he's scared next week about taking a position, so he tries to accommodate. And in doing that, accommodating, he just erodes any consistency in policy. This is why we get worked up. Because none of them, you recall the same Bulai and all of them who were part of the oil and gas network saying we should go to solar as base load. That conversation disappeared. Glenn Lal was said he could find a company to sell us power 3 cents per kilowatt hour. He had several months to do it. He did, the conversation disappeared, the Bulai disappeared too, and all of them. But they're the specialists. We would like to get the power 3 cents per kilowatt hour base load. Power 3 cents per kilowatt hour. They would just come write big long articles, excite people, and then nothing happens because it's zero. We don't have the luxury for that. Yeah, go on.
Yes, I remember you promised that you will find out why GR was taking long to release the articles. When settlement we still contact.
Okay.
Have you had any update from them?
No, I have not. But what did the GRA say to you?
Get no response. Text you should not
You should meet the commissioner and ask him directly. Okay?
Can you give us an update on the Mile Falls project?
Oh, okay. They're still assessing. So it's pre-qualification. And I think most likely that document is on the way to cabinet. If it has not gone there as yet, because I missed the cabinet, Thursday's cabinet too. So it may have already gone to the cabinet.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay. Good, sure. Yes.
The Natural Resources Fund Act has provisions for sanctions to be meted out to the Minister of Finance if it doesn't do certain things, such as update revenues that go in and out of the fund. However, correct me if I'm wrong, but legally, Guyana's finance minister is the president, who is immune from prosecution. So can you say when the country has a substantive minister, other than the president, whom civil society can hold accountable in accordance with this act?
So the Minister of Finance, there's Ashni Singh, is responsible for finance, but he is in the office of the president. So Ashni Singh is responsible. He has had these functions delegated to him. We interpret this as if he fails to perform the task, then he's liable. And he understands that too. So has he failed to update the public once? And let me remind the public why we put this provision in the law. APNU received $18 million in signing bonus. They hid the signing bonus for 1 year. Did not, when it came out, they hid the agreement too, because the agreement included the signing bonus. When it was finally revealed, then we discovered that the signing bonus was in an account that did not form part of the balance sheet of the central bank, nor was it placed in the consolidated fund. Now, the laws of Guyana and the Constitution of Guyana don't allow you to hold revenue in a separate account except 3 accounts. The consolidated fund, fund created by special legislation, or a deposit fund where you have to notify Parliament within a particular period, or once you create the deposit fund. This account was held outside, not falling in any of the three categories, they refused to pay it over to the consolidated fund. The PVP filed a court case. This is some opposition for them to release the money. Then we heard the Minister of Finance, but before that, before it was revealed they had the money, Winston Jordan was asked by the Kite Shore News about the signing bonus. And he said, we never requested nor did we receive it. It was false. He lied to the country. He lied to the country. He's now being held accountable until now for lying to the country. In the campaign period, when he was asked by another reporter, he said, we thought it was a gift. And I can find that clip for you. I hope you remember it. But I will find it, let one of my staff find the clip and we'll post it online for you. He thought that the signing bonus was a gift. $18 million a gift. So we said in opposition that this will never happen again. That every cent of revenue collected must be notified to the Parliament and published in the official gazette within a particular time period. I think it's 3 months. If the minister fails to do that, there is a 10 years jail penalty. So Ashley Singh exercises that now. He's the one who publishes it. He's the one who reports it to the Parliament. So that is the origin to prevent any such situation from happening again. That is the origin of that amendment. And further, we have removed all the direct charges that they had on the NRF. So apart from the money, through a formula that would have come out from the Minister of Finance, being advised by several bodies, but ultimately he decides how much money to take. We have a fixed formula now, so no discretion on the part of the minister. We put that in the law too. But they had several other charges on the NRF that were outside of the budgetary transfer. So we said, you will only have the budgetary transfer now from the NRF in accordance with this formula, and there shall be no other expenditure credited to the NRF. So the body that we put in place now to manage the NRF is a board now. When it was only the Minister of Finance, they can't charge any expenses to the NRF. They can't charge expenses to the NRF or any other expenditure. Any expenditure now will have to be funded through the budgetary process. That's a major reform. That's a major, major reform. People don't even look at the import of it. And that is why the IMF said it's one of the best legislation that you could see around the place. But we never get credit for that.
To monitor production at the pumps instead of relying on the production data that the oil companies produce. Now, how do you respond to these critics?
Yeah, I didn't get that too much. I told you already that we already have the Bureau of Standards there to calibrate the pump. There are several other safeguards that we have now in place that monitors production levels, sale levels, that we intend to enhance this by more robust systems, now focusing more on management. In the Exxon operation room, we intend to have a government representative. They're building now an operation room here on land that would allow you to see and practically control everything on all the FPSOs. There'll be a government presence there, as well as our own separate operation to monitor what's taking place offshore. But when you look at this, I said something the last time, that people in this country, particularly maybe some of the reporters, they don't understand when you're a public company in the United States of America, what you have to go through to be a public company. If you falsify information, sales information which could affect your ultimate revenue, so assuming a part of the Exxon Global operation is revenue from Guyana, and they falsify the production data and therefore their revenue data, the fines and people going to jail is massive. It's not here. So there are several, that's why when you deal with the publicly traded companies, they have a different standard of transparency. And so a Gulsaran or a Christopher Ram or some of the others I see writing like Hunt, who can't even calculate a royalty payment. You think these companies have tons and tons, they have to go through this all the time. Gulsaran has probably never even seen an audit of that nature. I haven't seen some of the expenses. And so this is why sometimes it's beyond the scale of comprehension. So they simplify. Like the same thing about reserves. Oh, all week they're getting like crazy about these reserves, and Jagdeo doesn't want to know the reserves, and neglecting the responsibility, and should go home and all of that. And the basic conflating discovery with reserves, and not understanding how you get to proven reserves. And then saying, oh, why he doesn't want Exxon to drill appraisal wells? Because appraisal wells cost more too, and comes out of the same pool cost. It's not ring fence, so the appraisal wells would be financed too. But even if they expand the reserves by doing the appraisal wells, more appraisal wells all the time, it doesn't mean that it's going to impact on production now, because the 11 billion barrels that of proven reserves are already justifying a 6 or maybe 6 FPSO kind of production level, which will take you to 1.2 to 1.5 billion a million barrels per day. So it has cost implications, and the reserves change too. So when you say 11 billion, you can even reduce that a bit too, because when they go to do the appraisal, that is why it is a fluctuating number. When they start doing more in-depth appraisal, they can see the size of the reservoir, its connection with other reservoirs, etc. Geology is important. So why you think in some countries they've discovered gas for a long time? Say Suriname. How many years now the discovery has taken place? But they have not declared commerciality as yet. And a final investment decision, FID, is not taken as yet for the development of gas. So it's a much more complex thing, and it goes, oh, Jagdeo not interested in reserves. So that's it. I'm interested in ensuring that we make sure that these 6 FPSOs are performing, that they're done in a safe manner, that we strengthen our tools to manage the sector, that we force the company not just to ensure that we get more revenue, but also that they expand their footprint in terms of procurement from Guyana and Guyanese people. So not 700 million, maybe growing the capacity to give $2 billion of business per year to local business, because that is the growth of Guyanese owned companies. That is what we're working on. Yeah.
Maybe 2 weeks ago you would have raised, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, that you would have raised concerns about the slothfulness of the judiciary Can you say why not, and or if the same concern would be raised in relation to our spill protection case, citing its importance to Ghanaian people?
Well, that case is, I think, already at the CCJ. That case is already at the CCJ. So it moved through the system like lightning. We have filed charges now about 3 years against many Patterson and Winston Jordan. We're not any close to trial as yet. That one moved through. You should, that's a bad example. That moved through the system like lightning. Like I saw some libel cases, like mine, this, what's her name again? Ferguson, I always forget her name. So Ferguson case went like that through the system. It went all the way to the CCJ. I won the right of having an appeal at the CCJ now. It went to the CCJ, came back. And you have people on the libel charges, who are waiting 5 years now and can't get their cases heard. So Charles Ramson has won, I think not Charles, Senior Ramson Senior has won against Golsaran. The one against me and Golsaran will come up soon. But that one has been for 5-6 years, I think, as me heard as yet. It seems as though in some places, that's what the impression I get, where it's PPP people being sued, it moves through with alacrity through the system. And when you have, look at Ashni Singh and the charges and Brassington. You remember when they were charged, how quickly, and they had to pay $2 million per offense in bail, $20 million in bail and stuff like that. Jordan is practically walking around the place, and he look at the nature of the offense, how egregious it is. So I believe that if you're, in fact, I rest my case. I rest my case.
And finally from me, President Adebayo has spoken about a French vessel that is supposed to come to patrol our waters, which is to be able to curb illegal fishing so that man will not lose approximately $100 million. Can you say if the vessel has arrived?
I don't think so, but I don't, it could have. But I don't think so. It has not. But this is the estimate. Remember when we were talking about policing our exclusive economic zone? So we do have to look at it. It's estimated that we could lose as much as $100 million per year from illegal fishing in our waters. This is deep sea though, deep sea. So investing in more assets for the Army would have a significant benefit, or bringing in revenue, or allowing us, even if it doesn't allow us to bring in revenue, because they can keep the illegal fishing out so that we can actively exercise a licensing regime so that there'd be more revenue for the country.
Just quickly,
Yes.
we heard the passing of Justice Desiree Bernard. I know she was appointed the first chancellor.
Yes.
On your prejudice.
Yeah.
Any remarks?
Desiree Bernard was, so she just passed, I hope, yeah. She was a great Guyanese, yeah, great Guyanese. I think she served us in an exemplary way, and we had a good working relationship, but one that preserved the independence of the judiciary. She was fiercely patriotic, and I think she was a standard to which many other judges should aspire. She established that standard. I was extremely proud when she went to the CCJ, and I just want to give my condolences to her relatives, family. It's a loss for our country. Yeah, thank you very much. Oh, you have another question? Let me give. Okay, yes, go ahead. Glenn, I'll just send you a note. All right, let's tell him I'm now doing that for you. Now, Glenn Lal, tell Glenn Lal, text him back and say, no, I'm not answering your question anymore. All right, thank you very much.